this computer. Lovely. Hello and welcome to another episode of the Good Guy podcast, which also was the Walk in the Park podcast for a little while and has been various names that I can't decide on. Well, this is a public episode. If you want to support the podcast and get a bonus episode every week, jump on patreon.com/Vittorio Angelone. If you can work out how to spell my name and get involved over there for as little as £1 a month, you get 4 bonus episodes, a bonus episode every week, and all sorts of, when shows come back, you'll get early release tickets and merch when that exists and all that. Just get involved. We've got an exciting, it's not just me in the park today. It's not just me talking to myself. We've got an actual guest again. The wonderful Andrew Hankinson, who I have in the solo podcast been ranting and raving about your book, about how much I enjoyed it, and I've defined myself as a book guy now because I was really bad at like reading things. I think I had that classic incidence of like too much schooling really kills your passion for anything. So through the process of like GCSE English and stuff, I was reading these tremendous books, but being told to learn essays off by heart to tick all the points and get all the marks. So I really fell out of love with reading at age like 15, and then have struggled to come back to it. I've tried various different ways to get back into it. Like a few years ago, I read Holes, because I was like, that's easy. I can do that. Like I've read it before. I know what happens. And it's easy. I can do that. I read it. And then I was like, I just didn't have a real passion to read anything straight afterwards. And there's been various attempts over the years, but your book has gotten me back in to reading. Well, because it almost bridges the gap between podcasts and books. Yeah. It's like the opposite of an audiobook is what I kind of thought. It's like, it's all transcribed podcasts.
One of the stupid things about it, just while you were saying that about, it's like the opposite of an audiobook. One of the nightmare things about this book is you can't really turn it into an audiobook, because what are you going to have, like someone like sat reading each line or sort of doing impressions of these people and stuff. So it's a nightmare. Honestly, I've given my publisher such a problem. But anyway. Yeah,
because I'm sure audiobooks are so important these days, because that's the way so many people... I've never done it. I've never done an audiobook. I'm a big podcast listener. And I have 37 podcasts of my own, but are you an audiobook person?
No, I have listened to a few audio, but maybe like 3 or 4 audio books. But no, I've not subscribed to Audible. But I don't know. I like to have the books end up on my shelf, I think, anyway. So to kind of like remind myself that I did that.
I even had a Kindle briefly. The book I read on it, I really enjoyed, and I was just really sad that I couldn't like lend it to someone, and I couldn't be like, oh, this person would really enjoy that book.
My memory's so shocking that I just forget what I've read, and I forgot what it's about, what's in them. People ask me about a book that I've read, I can't really describe it to them. So if it's not there on the shelf to pick up, when I need to pick it up, then it's no good. Same with, I had a Kindle. I got a Kindle for a leaving present from a magazine once, and I sold it and bought some shoes instead. So, like,
what kind of shoes?
I can't remember, like some suede shoes, but it's I absolutely know what you mean. And the thing that you were saying about finding it difficult to kind of read, I'm completely the same as that. I don't know what that book Holes is that you mentioned, but what way is that?
So I don't know if it got made into a movie as well with Shia LaBeouf in it, where he gets sent off to like a juvenile detention camp where they just dig holes all day. And it's this like mad story, but it's kind of like a adolescent level book, I would say. And that author Louis Sachar also wrote a brilliant book, kind of about comedy called Dogs Can't Tell Jokes.
Okay.
And it's about this schoolboy who has decided he's going to enter the talent show as a stand-up comedian, and he's working on this set the whole time, and how is he going to tie it all together and like make this whole thing tie together. And he has there's a really funny bit that's really stuck with me, and I read it when I was like 12 or something, where he during the talent show, like he's had this joke in the back burner, but he knows it doesn't make any sense. He just thinks it sounds like a joke. and he throws it in the middle of the talent show and goes like, oh fuck, I better move on because that joke doesn't make sense. And the joke is, how do you tell the difference between two worms? By kissing them. And then he just goes on, and, and I was just like, "That is funny."
Yeah.
I have no idea why.
That's good. Yeah,
and it like functions as a joke for some reason.
Yeah. Well, it comes it's from a different direction, doesn't it? You know, it sends you one way and then sends you the other way. That's great.
Yeah.
But I was the same thing. I couldn't read. I think all those like English literature and stuff. At school anyway, sucked the life out of books.
Yeah.
You know, it's all about the imagery. What does this represent and stuff? And it's like, I just want to read this book and get from the beginning to the end and sort of then think about how I feel about it rather than what this means. What do you think the author means? And a lot of times when they're saying what they think the author meant, I'm not sure I really buy it, to be honest.
We give authors a lot of, no offense to yourself as an author, like we give them a lot. We give them a lot of credit as like, they were really thinking this, and I'm like, maybe.
Yeah, exactly. Maybe, we don't know. And how about they weren't? And we just move on. Yeah. So I think they suck the life out of books. And I used to read like Asterix books until like way older than I should have been reading Asterix. You know, just because it was like it kept things going. It was funny. You know what I mean? It's like. I completely agree with you. Anything that you can get back in, it doesn't matter like how low grade the book is. If it can get you back into reading a little bit, just go for it, you know.
And I saw actually Anthony Jeselnik was on Andrew Santino's podcast, and for a lot of people who listen to this, they'll be like, who the fuck and who the fuck? But they're famous.
I know Anthony Jeselnik, but I don't know the other person.
Andrew Santino, so he's a LA based comedian who used to open for Joe Rogan and and is kind of building his own following. His great podcast. And on Andrew Santino's podcast, Anthony Jeselnik Andrew Santino said, I often pick up books, get halfway through and kind of just stop. And I feel bad about that. And I feel like I've failed on some level. And Anthony Jeselnik was like, no, actually, it's still reading. Even if you don't like it and you have to stop and you want to move on to a different book and you kind of lose faith in the book halfway through, like, that's still good. Like, keep doing that if that's all you can manage.
Anthony Jeselnik sounds a bit patronising there. But,
I think Anthony Jeselnik sounds a bit patronising all the time.
But I think like that thing of stopping halfway through a book, I can't do that. I just want to get through it. So even if it'll take me like, months to get through this book, I still want to get to the end of it. Otherwise I feel like I've wasted all that time before then. Yeah. And you kind of can't have a real opinion on it until you've got through it, I think, as well. So,
no, that's true.
Same as comedy, it's like if you haven't watched the whole thing, if you've just seen like a couple of jokes, you don't really know what the whole special is or whatever. So
that's hard. Yeah. I mean, I bail out of people's specials a lot. I think a lot of people do that. I just like, you get 15 minutes in and you go,
I get it.
I know what's happening here. Like it's fine. And I struggle to watch comedy at the minute. Like where I'm used, like the London thing, I'm used to being on stage kind of 7 nights a week or whatever. And watching like someone perform to a theater on Netflix just makes me really sad. I'm just like, oh no. That's where I want to be.
Yeah. No, I know. I don't think I watch very much stand up either at the moment, and it's so many of those specials. They kind of keep saying suck the life out of things, but they kind of suck the life out of things as well when they take it. Like I love the ones which have tried to. There's been a bit of a trend recently of putting specials in clubs, filming their specials in clubs, and it's so much better. It's like, I want it to be dark. I want it to be like someone crammed in there. I don't want to see the audience. I don't want like the audience to get lit up and see like people laughing at that joke. It's like,
the Live at the Apollo thing where someone goes like any joke to do with race, and it immediately just like cuts to a black guy in the audience going ho ho ho.
Like, oh, it's okay.
It's like it's that's so patronizing by the editors to be like, it's okay, guys, don't worry.
I have seen that sort of thing where someone said a joke and then it's cut to it's been a joke about like something to do with genders or something like that, and then it's cut to women in the audience laughing, and it really does feel like it's okay. A woman is laughing.
It's very, very funny when that happens. But the club thing for sure. I think it's really make or break for a special the way it's filmed. I think it absolutely. Like, and I've only learned this in the last couple of years about how important the direction of a special is, and you can tell the ones that really stick out. And I remember Bill Burr, I heard him on an interview talking about his Paper Tiger special, which was in the Albert Hall in London. And I think that's a kind of different case, because he filmed it there because one of his favorite Led Zeppelin videos was there, and he was like, well, I wanted to do that. I just like Led Zeppelin, and I thought it would be cool to do that, and I like that level of it. But he spoke about the director Mike Binder would kind of, the plan was stay on one camera angle for the duration of a joke until at least a punchline. Okay. Because when you cut to different things, like the audience's brain kind of resets, and like feels different. Because I always think that,
that's
I
really
think
interesting. Yeah.
When you're an audience member, you're one angle, like you're just seeing it from one angle, and it's great. Yeah. It's the best thing ever. But for some reason, the special thing makes you feel like you have to bounce around from side to side and see the comedian from behind and all this weird stuff. And it's like,
I've heard comedians talk about why they do that. You know, it's something to do with the editing process and stuff. They have to go somewhere other than there on the screen. But I've seen people do it without doing that, and it's been much better. So I just think, don't do that. Yeah.
Let's talk about the book. So for anyone who hasn't heard of the book, I won't do you the disservice of me summing up what your book is. I'll leave that to you. For people who haven't read or heard about the book, or maybe haven't listened to the solo episodes, what is the book?
Sure. Well, it's called Don't Applaud, Either Laugh or Don't at the Comedy Cellar. And it's talking about the Comedy Cellar. I know there are other Comedy Cellars. It's the Comedy Cellar in New York, in Greenwich Village, which kind of became famous more recently because of the Louis C.K. program that was filmed there. And it started out as a kind of a biography. I wrote a few things for different magazines and stuff about this club. And then I decided I wanted to write a book about it because I found particularly the owner quite fascinating and the things that he was kind of dealing with. So I wanted to write a biography of this club, of this place. And as I was writing it, then the Louis C.K. scandal came out in 2017, I think it was. So then it started becoming much more about kind of, how did the owner cope with that? But then also kind of culture war stuff, as we say. I hate this kind of phrase, and you use any of these phrases and it kind of marks you out as like you are one side or the other, and I'm not. But for the sake of shorthand, the culture war stuff that was going on as well, the comedians and the owner and the audience members were all kind of like dealing with these, differing opinions of what can you say, who can say it, who can appear on the stage, why do they get to appear on the stage, why do they get to say that, should they be able to talk about the subject, and it was all about that stuff. So it started as a biography of the club, and then it became about kind of wider culture, and the club just happened to be the place where it was happening.
And it works for anyone who's interested in reading it. It works backwards chronologically, and it's kind of, and you say it's such an interesting book because you feel, or I felt like I could see the book emerging, and like as you worked backwards through it, I could very much, despite the fact that throughout its interview transcripts and emails and this and that, and there's, in a way, there's very little of you in the book. I could still very much see what you were going through and what was happening. It was like it has this extra level where it was like, oh yeah, and then this must have happened, and then this, and like it was a story kind of very subtly, and I just really enjoyed that was just underneath everything else, and it was so simple just to go, well, this is what everyone said.
And
I thought that was so good.
Thank you, that's nice. So it goes backwards. So it starts with the Louis C.K. stuff, and then ends up when it goes to when the club very first opened, and kind of a little like after bit where it's kind of people talking about before the club opened, about their lives, like where their points of view came from, I suppose. But my agent did not want to do it backwards. He was like, I had many meetings with him where we sat down and be like, don't do it backwards because it's going to make it more difficult. And he was probably right in terms of it's the same with my first book as well, which was about this murder of Raoul Moat, and I kind of did that in a weird way. And weird way doesn't help your book get into the hands of the kind of mainstream. But I thought, but for me, if you had a grip of stand-up culture and the stand-up world, you would understand what was happening through this book. So it was okay to go backwards. And I wanted to start it. I wanted to do it backwards because I wanted to show how we got to where we are.
Yeah.
Kind of the anger and stuff. Go back to show. And also, where some of this stuff came from, but also show kind of the way it was before, and you can kind of think, was that the way, how are we arriving in the right place, and are we going at the right speed, sort of thing. But also, nobody wants to read, when you read a biography, it's really boring when it goes on for like chapters where it's just like, and then I went to school, and then this happened, and then this happened, and this happened. It's really boring. So I thought everyone just wants to kind of get to the Louis C.K. stuff, probably. So I'll start it with the Louis C.K. stuff and then go backwards and do the rest of that. So you kind of have the big, this is a big celebrity thing, and then you kind of go backwards. And then when you said as well, sorry, I'm going on, but the when you said, oh, you're in it, I really didn't want to be in it at all. I don't want to be in my books, I don't want to be in stories. But the problem with putting stuff that comedians have said out into the public now, and they've said it on stage, is they can get in a lot of trouble for it, and it can cause them a lot of harm and distress. So I wanted to show that there was someone asking about this stuff and prompting their responses and prompting their quotes, rather than just taking their quotes and putting it into some copy. So I wanted to show that there was a conversation going on. The reason why they're saying these things is because I'm asking these particular questions. And I kind of been doing a PhD about this sort of stuff at university the last few years, where it's like, I want to show that these quotes didn't arrive out of nowhere. They were prompted by a journalist, me, and that's why they ended up in this book. So don't blame the person who's saying it, blame the person who's asking the questions and getting them towards saying these things. So that's why a lot of it is transcripts of interviews.
But I think that functions kind of perfectly the way you intended it. It functions as that. I'm trying to remember if it's in your book or if it's, because I was listening to a lot of stuff around it at the same time, where I think Stuart Lee says it, and it might be in your book, where the stage has to function as a set of inverted commas. It has to of like a set of quotation. That's in the
prologue.
Yes. That's what it is.
So just to explain to people, it's all about this comedy club. But for the British edition of the book, I started it with a big interview with Stuart Lee, because a lot of the book is about free expression and how we deal with free expression. And I know that Stuart Lee had this big thing of free experience of defending free expression when he did the Jerry Springer show. And then his position has changed a lot over the last kind of 15 years. As positions have changed for a lot of people because we have progressed, so I wanted to talk to him because he's a famous person in the UK. It'll tee it up for the British audience, and it'll also explain kind of what the book is about. It's about these debates that are going on around culture.
It contextualizes it for someone who doesn't have that.
And that thing with the stage has got inverted commas. It was Paul Provenza who told him that. And then Stuart Lee talks about it in the book. He said Paul Provenza said you should treat it like the stage's got inverted commas on it. But then Stuart Lee says, but because of social media and YouTube and all this sort of stuff, and people's ability to take the material out of the room, those kind of inverted commas have been taken away.
And that's an interesting thing. And I've been speaking to other comedians about how that's affected comedy more generally. And I was speaking to Alfie Brown, who I don't know if you know, but a fantastic comedian.
I know who he is.
He was saying that, like, my generation of comedians, kind of in our 20s now, like kind of starting out and finding our place in stand-up comedy, have this insane pressure to be a fully formed comedian straight away and post clips online and have podcasts and be our fully self-actualized versions of ourselves, kind of 2-3 years in. And I think as well, something in the UK that really plays into that I find so strange. So like in America, you are maybe 10 years into comedy, any kind of really a good bit into comedy before anyone expects you to do 60 minutes of material. And you're even longer into comedy and kind of have to be revered in a certain way before you try and say anything deeper or more narrative or more kind of have like a moral to it. Whereas in the UK, there's this pressure of like, okay, so 3 or 4 years into your stand-up career, you will go to Edinburgh and do a heart-wrenching comedy show with a moral to the story and a kind of pathos and like this whole like hero's journey of a 60 minutes of stand-up. And I kind of think we're not like, I don't know which is right. I think maybe everyone should have more elements of kind of truth and actually trying to say something with their comedy, whereas I find kind of or some American comedy can end up being a bit surface because the kind of jokes per minute is very demanding on them, whereas with the Edinburgh thing you get a bit more space to make potentially more interesting stuff. But it takes a long time to know how to craft a joke and to get to the level where you can craft a joke about a difficult subject for you or for the audience. Like 3 to 4 years just seems like an impossible task to place on comedians to go, okay, tell us what you really think, but make it funny as well. And I don't know, like what, sorry, go on.
I was just going to say, like, so what you were saying about the pressure on to go to Edinburgh and perform a particular type of show, but to me, as an outsider, someone who isn't anything to do with stand-up comedy, can't you just choose what kind of show you go and do at Edinburgh? I know that, you know, maybe some of the attention goes to people who've got a story, but that's because it kind of fits. If you've got a personal story and you go and do a show about it, then it kind of gives something. For, you know, it's easier to review that, it's easier to write about, but you can still choose to go to Edinburgh and do a 60-minute show of like one-liners and stuff.
Well, this is what I thought, and that is true to a degree. Okay. But for example, I know comedians who I look up to who are amazing, like some of the best club comedians, like will absolutely level a room every time they get on stage. It's completely unbelievable. But they'll get a 3-star Edinburgh, like a 3-star review in Edinburgh, and the only issue posited by the reviewer is it just felt like an hour-long club set. And you kind of think, do you know how hard that is to do? Like, that's an incredible feat. And so if you want to just do the show that you want to do and go to Edinburgh, you can do that. But for most comedians, Edinburgh is, number one, very, very expensive if you want a decent room in a paid venue. Basically anywhere not on the free fringe. And if you want to do any kind of promotion and marketing around Edinburgh with the posters and stuff, hiring a marketing company or PR people, like insanely expensive. And then, God, the rent is colossal. For the month in Edinburgh, you're looking at like £1,500 to share a room with someone.
But you don't need Edinburgh anymore. Like I know it's good for the validation. It feels it's the same in writing. You want to tick off certain milestones, but you've got a podcast and you've got social media and everything, and you've got your clubs. You're going to sell tickets by doing your podcast and stuff.
So this is the thing.
You know what I mean?
It depends what you want to do, and this is where I think I'm insanely lucky. So I have family in Edinburgh, so I stay for free. I have to cook them dinner once a week. That's the agreement.
Oh, that's cheap.
I know. And it's like walkable into town. I've only done Edinburgh once. I did a split show where I did half an hour and another comedian did half an hour, and I did it on the free fringe, so not that expensive. Had to pay for flyers and posters, but rooms were pretty full. Buckets were great. I made money in Edinburgh with a half an hour show that I was happy with. The problem is that the path that I am taking and I want to take is the one you spoke about, where you have a podcast and you build this authentic audience by doing what you want to do and kind of staying true to your own artistic values. The difference is I'm middle class, have that Edinburgh thing, so I can afford not to make money from comedy. For it's a longer path of building that audience to the point where you can start selling things out and even start getting paid work, because there's a point of social media audience size where TV go, oh, actually it is worth getting them on, even though we didn't like them on the way up. This just makes financial sense now. But for a working class comedian who doesn't have family in Edinburgh, and like a lot of the ways to get a good agent or to get on TV is to do that narrative Edinburgh show and get well reviewed and get nominated for an Edinburgh Award. You see it goes, you get nominated for the award, you do all the panel shows, and then you're kind of established as a comedian. But
you can make a living.
Those more working class comedians can't afford to get into those like Pleasance venues because of the money and stay up there, and they in a way also can't afford to wait long enough to do the longer path of the social media success. And look, some of them can, and there are ways to do it, and it's just so much slower and it's so much harder to build. And that's what I want to do. That's people who I look up to have done that. Like Bill Burr took such a longer time than so many of his contemporaries, but now he's much more successful and respected. He's kind of won on both ends. I think that immediate fast track to success has a ceiling on it, but a lot of people need to take that route.
But so if you're a young working class comedian, you're just going to have to work at something else for the first, few years, and be doing the podcast in your spare time, be doing, trying to get as much stuff out there as you can. But as an outsider, do you know how old fashioned that kind of system looks? Honestly, nobody, you're talking about reviews, like you get a 3-star review.
Yeah.
Nobody believes reviews anymore, because you read them and it's been shown lots of examples. So you read them and you're like, this doesn't mean anything anymore. Like it's much more reflecting the place where it's been written and the person who's written it than it is the actual thing that appeared on the stage. So nobody buys it. I know it's the same with books. It's useful in order to get contact with other people and get an agent or whatever and things like that. So it's useful, but the audience isn't interested in that in the least. And the Edinburgh thing, people are much more interested in your podcasts in social media and stuff like that than they are in Edinburgh shows. Edinburgh shows, I started taking my family up there now. It's it's a trip. It's a time away for people. It's but your audience is probably not going to be mainly going to Edinburgh. You know what I mean? So it's to me, it's all. Even Stuart Lee shows, he's like an older guy, been in the industry for ages, but he's shown it. It's he doesn't want to be part of that. He goes and goes and books rooms, and he knows that he's going to have a limited audience, but as long as he keeps performing to that audience, he's going to make a living. And that's the same, Patreon. You find your audience, they pay you money.
Yeah,
it's
and that's been hugely beneficial.
Honestly, the panel show thing, I haven't watched panel shows for so long because they became not great to watch, So it's I'm not sure what favour that's. It's good for living. Good for a living. If I was a comedian, I'd want to be earning some panel show money, and also you want the validation to say to your mum and dad, "Hey, look, I was on BBC One or whatever."
Yeah,
it feels good. But once you've done it, maybe.
Even as the fees are declining as well, so it's not even even the monetary thing, which is kind of the only. I find it so weird, that it seems like the goal of stand-up in the UK is to eventually sit down and just do panel shows. It's why is that? That seems so strange to me. For I'm in love with stand-up comedy. It's my favorite thing in the world to do. So the thought that the aim is to do something, to be an actor or to be a panelist or to be X, Y, and Z, it is so strange. And you see those. I think you can spot them, the comedians like someone like Kevin Bridges did all of the panel shows once and went, okay, I got what I needed from that. I built whatever audience I was going to get from them in one episode. And now again, he's surpassed anyone who stuck with that kind of method of doing things and was kind of banking on that panel show and TV success rather than coming back to what you do, which is stand-up comedy.
Yeah. I mean, when you were talking about Kevin Bridges there, it makes me think of when I write for like a particular magazine or something like that. And once you've done it once, I think, I didn't really like that. I wasn't very impressed with the process. It didn't get what I wanted when it came out. So you kind of move on, you know. But once you try to, you move on. But that stuff, the panel shows, I love Edinburgh. I think Edinburgh's really great. But the panels, but it doesn't seem to be the stand-up that I really love. Because the stand-up that I live in Newcastle, we've got the Stand.
Brilliant.
It's like, this honestly, when that place opened, it was just like, oh my God, we've got a proper comedy club.
It's amazing as well. It's
just brilliant. You go downstairs, it's you know, you're rammed in. Hopefully it's like busy. You know, you sit on the little table, and then people come up on the stage and either make you laugh or don't make you laugh, but it's live and you don't know how it's going to go. And it's totally different. And it's like when you go to the theatre, and when I used to live in London, I used to love going to the National. And it's just a totally different experience. If then someone says, oh, now we're going to put the theatre, like I know they did lots of online theatre stuff during lockdown. If you're going to put this, you know, broadcast this, it just doesn't feel the same. I'm not that interested in it. But when you're there in the room and it's live and you don't know what's going to happen and you don't know how, there's all these people around you in the audience, you don't know what they're going to do. Not that I don't want them to heckle, but you just don't know what's going to happen in this room with all these people there. That's what's brilliant about stand-up comedy. And all the rest of that stuff is necessary for comedians to earn their living, but it's just not of any interest.
Well, the thing I landed on recently, because I've been trying to work out, because I think it is that thing of absence makes the heart grow fonder. Like I've really realized how much I care about stand-up comedy and how much I love doing it. So I've been in the space, like this break, I've been going, well, what is it? And I think it's definitely the things you said. Something I landed on that I'd like your thoughts on as like an audience member is, I think it's the only art form where the audience is as at risk as the comedian. Because I think really good stand-up comedy is the person on stage says something that they think but might not say in any other situation. Yeah. So they're putting themselves on the line. And then the audience choosing to laugh, even though it's involuntary, but like making themselves vulnerable. Because if you're the only person to laugh at something like that, then it's just two people embarrassed in a room going, oh God, we're the only people that think that.
Yeah.
So it's like the audience are putting themselves at risk by laughing along with these kind of controversial, or just like these thoughts and feelings that aren't spoken about in these taboos. And so the comedian feels vindicated, and there's a catharsis of like, oh, thank God I'm not the only one. And the audience feels the exact same thing because they've put themselves in the line and gone, oh God, everyone else is laughing. It's okay. Like we're all okay. It's normal.
Yeah. There's an acceptance when people are around you laughing, definitely. But there's also the risk, you know, that a lot of people, I don't know if comedians realize this, but a lot of people are kind of afraid to go to stand-up clubs because they're worried that the comedian, I mean, and it does happen sometimes, but not very often anymore. They're really worried. I mean, I know quite a few people who've, like, when I've talked about going to the Stand, they're like, oh, I wouldn't want to go because you just don't know if the comedian's going to say something to you. And they're worried about going along to it, you know? The Stand is so big. It's 400 seats. Yeah. It's like so unlikely that it's going to be you. Yeah, but people are genuinely afraid. And I always want to go right at the front. Like, comedians probably hate this as well. I'm one of those awful audience members. But I always just want to be right at the front because I just want to see up close, like what they're like, what they're saying, you know. It's just, I really love it. And nobody ever says any, you know, no comedians don't do that really. It's not very fashionable, I don't think, anyway, to talk about the audience. You don't go, oh, look at that guy's jumper and look at this and all this sort of thing. Yeah, it's really friendly nowadays. Yeah, exactly. It's like, that's lovely. You guys are so nice. And then there's like maybe a little like, oh, don't be doing, like, you know, like a little jibe, but it's not like complete, unless you're a heckler, you're not being like torn apart by anyone on stage. It just doesn't happen anymore. You're not at risk. So what was, because obviously you said like when the Stand got built, you were like, oh, this is class. So you obviously had an interest in comedy before that. What was, do you have a first memory of stand-up or the first time you were like, oh, this is great? No, I only really got into stand-up properly maybe 10 years ago, something like that. But when I was a teenager, I was born in 1980, and when I was a teenager, we had a big, we didn't have we had some of the like kind of comedy venues, but we didn't have the stand. But so we used to go to the City Hall to watch comedy. So it was the big shows.
Yeah,
and it was Eddie Izzard was my favorite. So I had all his specials and stuff. I just thought he was absolutely fantastic. I think maybe we went to see Bill Bailey when I was a bit older or something like that. But yeah, Eddie Izzard was kind of the only one who we'd go and see. And we liked things like, Eddie Murphy films and stuff like that.
Yeah.
But that was about it. But I never really went to see stand-up during my 20s. It wasn't until I got into maybe my 30s that I started going to see stand-up, because I realised what it was like. Because I think this happens with a lot of audience members, is you go and see some comedy and it's not very good. And you just, and it's really awkward when you go and see comedy, especially if it's someone who's not very good. It's likely that the venue's not going to be full. So you go along and see someone, the venue's not full, and then you're sitting in this half-filled room with someone on stage who's not making people laugh, and and you can't leave because that's awkward as well.
It's so
that really puts you off. Yeah, it's really, so there's always that risk. So I'm kind of quite fussy about the people I go and see. But so I think I'd been put off probably by that, and it wasn't until I got into maybe my 30s or maybe late 20s that I started getting into stand-up and going to see shows.
And you felt this pull towards the American style stuff.
Yeah. So this is you got to be like this all of this stuff in retrospect sounds terrible and marks me out as a terrible person. There was a radio show called Opie and Anthony in America.
I know it.
So you did a thing about Patrice O'Neill. Patrice O'Neill used to be on there all the time. But Opie and Anthony, they were shock jocks. So now kind of, and one of them kind of it went down a very kind of right-wing route.
Yeah.
And so there's lots of controversy around that. But I started it because when I was in my 20s, I was working for men's magazines. Louis C.K. Guest edited British Esquire. And Ricky Gervais guest edited British Esquire. He commissioned Louis C.K. to write an article. I thought this article was really, really funny. I'd never heard of Louis C.K. Started looking him up. That's when he was bringing out probably like Chewed Up, Hilarious, those kind of specials and stuff like that. I thought Louis C.K. was very, very funny. I started looking him up on the internet, watched his clips on the internet. Then when you could do that, you find these clips of him appearing on this radio show called Opie and Anthony. And he was hilarious on it. So, so funny. And Louis C.K., and one of the co-hosts on that show was also called Jim Norton, though he wasn't in the title. Jim Norton was a really funny comedian. He used to talk about this club called the Comedy Cellar. All these comedians who started appearing on this, who were appearing on the show: Patrice O'Neill, Colin Quinn, Bill Burr, Bonnie McFarlane, Bridge Foss, like lots of them would talk about the Comedy Cellar. That was their kind of home club where they used to hang around on this table. And I thought, and these comedians really made me laugh because, and this was before I kind of understood Stuart Lee, but there weren't many British comedians around at that point, which I was finding very funny. These American comedians were kind of felt more honest with each other and with the audience. And so I was really attracted to that, the kind of honesty that they had. So that's why I got interested in stand-up again. It was through this group of comedians, via Louis C.K. and this comedy club as well. Yeah.
And the Comedy Cellar is such I mean, for anyone who wants to know what makes it such an interesting place, definitely get the bloody book. But like there's so many phenomenal clips from that club that I've seen. And again, it's one camera at the back of the room and it does the job. Like it's that thing of like all these specials and everything. And it's just like a packed room of people and one camera and you capture it perfectly. Like I think one of the best clips of stand-up that has been released in the past, I think ever actually, is Chris DiStefano's 9/11 story recorded at the Comedy Cellar.
Right, yeah.
Because it is a 12-minute story in New York on the anniversary of 9/11 to New Yorkers. Like everything's at stake. Everything could go as wrong as it could possibly go wrong. And he's drunk as a skunk. But like, so every single moment of it is a risk. And no matter how much kind of trust he builds up with the audience, he's still talking about, like, it's still, everything's on the line. At no stage does it ever stop being on the line for the whole. And it's just, there is something about that American style of comedy, and I really flip back and forward. Like, I spend months going, no, this American stuff so much better, and then you kind of watch a Stuart Lee thing and you go, but that's, and then I don't know if you've seen someone called Daniel Kitson.
Yeah, well, I've never seen him live, but yeah, I've seen him.
Like sensational, and like it frustrates me that Daniel Kitson will know who Dave Chappelle is, but Dave Chappelle won't know who Daniel Kitson is, because I think and similar with like maybe Stuart Lee as well. And Stuart Lee, I don't know if you saw his most recent show that I think is coming out as a special soon. He has a whole bit about Dave Chappelle in it, and I think it's
I saw that. Yeah. Up in Edinburgh, I saw him do it. Yeah. No, it was weird when it's kind of disorienting when he talks about Dave Chappelle. By the way, Daniel Kitson, I've never seen him live, but I have tried to see him live a few times, but it just hasn't worked out. But it was very disorientating as well when you bring up someone like Chris Stefano, someone, you know, when you talk to someone in this country and they're talking about these comedians and you're like, oh, I didn't know. You
it's do like bump a into people every little, and it's like, oh, you know.
Oh, you like them as well.
You know who that is.
No, they're totally different styles, and I know Stuart Lee like trashes a lot of the American comedians, you know, and Stuart Lee, like, I've got all of his specials. I just think he's absolutely fantastic, and it's probably made me laugh harder than any comedian ever. Like live when I saw him at the Content Provider at the Royal Festival Hall. That was the hardest I had ever laughed, when it does a bit where his trousers fall down, so it sounds so like juvenile, and it is, but there was something about this ranting older man on the stage, and you know, it was just absolutely amazing. And so he hates those Americans, so he's kind of, but you don't have to choose like one side or the other, you know what I mean? It's like they've got a totally different style. Also, some of those Americans, their specials aren't that good. But when you see them doing the club, that's what I found with quite a few of them, actually. When I watch their specials, I'm a bit disappointed with them. And then when I see them at somewhere like the Comedy Cellar, they're absolutely incredible, because they just engage with that moment so far. They're so comfortable on that stage there as well. That they can do what they like, and they know they've got their material that they can go back to, and then they'll go see where something else goes, you know.
I think there is a space being carved out for that kind of thing in the UK gradually, and I think it's well on its way, with people, like you say, building their own audiences and their podcasts, and just kind of the horrible word globalization. But it's like, I feel like every time I say that, I feel like Alex Jones, you know, like the globalist. But like there are a lot more, like you say, like you come across them a lot more often, like American stand-up fans in the UK, and just like stand-up fans more broadly. Like everything's accessible. The stand-up is watched on YouTube more than it's watched anywhere else, and there's 20,000 Netflix specials, most of which are horrendous. But like, there is that audience building, and I think some clubs are buying into that ethos of the excitement of being in the room. And like somewhere like Hot Water Comedy Club in Liverpool, their whole brand is built off clips of the compere, kind of in the moment, riffing, talking to people, doing that whole thing. And like, and there's kind of a graduating class of comedians who came up, and as that club was being built, they are the kind of home team of that club. That is their home club. They feel comfortable there. And like, and there's a bit where a video I saw, Adam Rowe was on stage headlining, and he goes, "All right, welcome back to the stage, Paul Smith." And then the MC's not in the room. And then he's just on stage, and he's like, "Oh, what are I doing?" Someone goes, "Oh, do 3 minutes on Paul Smith." So, and then the MC comes back and he goes, "No, you're going to sit there and I'm going to tell a story about you." And it's those moments where something like, I don't know, the Live at the Apollo, the TV stuff, it's also clean and crisp and polished and chopped up and edited, and it can't go wrong.
Yeah, that's the thing. You're watching a live, what you call it, a tightrope act,
Yeah,
live wire act, the tightrope act. But they've got they're strapped on. It's made safe, and so that's no good. Whereas in the club, they're really doing it.
and
you don't know if they're going to make it across here. That's what's so brilliant. That's what's so great about Colin Quinn. One of the people I write about in the book is amazing, and he does it brilliantly. Stuart Lee does it brilliantly, and they do it deliberately, where they kill the atmosphere in the room, and they just make it so people aren't laughing.
Yeah.
And if you know them, it's kind of like, how it's going to end. That people are going to be laughing again, but you still have that just controlling the atmosphere of the room, bring it down, tension, and it's like, oh my god, it's not laughing. And so some people who haven't seen them before think, oh, we're watching a comedian messing up.
Wrong.
It's gone wrong. And then they bring it back up, and it's just, to watch that kind of control is just so amazing.
Yeah. What I love that Colin Quinn managed to make happen in Tough Crowd, which for people listening is I don't want to call it a panel show. It's like a roundtable show, like a shit talking news roundup show of comedians in America. Kind of Comedy Cellar, actually.
It started from the Comedy Cellar, yeah. It's about like 2002, 2004, I think it was, or something like that. Yeah. Or Comedy Central in America.
Yeah, but what's like, it's just so much better to watch than any of the highly edited UK panel shows, because people were allowed to bomb in front of the light, and it went to air.
Yeah,
people would have jokes not land, and then Patrice would inevitably laugh at them for landing.
That's what was good about it, is that you could allow a joke not to work, and then maybe Paul Merton does this a bit on Have I Got News for You? But that thing of it's a lot more polished and a lot more produced, And it was just someone would tell a joke, doesn't work, and then Jim Norton or Patrice O'Neill or whoever picks them up on it and annihilates them for it. And often it was the host, Colin Quinn, would mess up his lines and stuff like that.
So often, I never like watching it. You're just like, well, how did you get the host? You can't talk. Like you can't talk. You fully
Colin's great, but he knows that he would mumble his lines a little bit and stuff like that. Yeah, and then they're nailing for it. And so you're watching this like genuine interaction of going on between people who weren't horrible to each other. They genuinely loved each other, but and kind of going in. A couple of times they did have people on who they didn't like. I write about one of those in the book, and is that fan, and I think Rich Voss and Patrice kind of picked on him.
Vietnamese Matrix.
They pick on him, and afterwards, Rich Voss is in the book saying, he wrote to that fan recently to apologise to him because he felt bad for him. So it does, it goes wrong sometimes. But that's the thing. It's like but that's why it's so pleasurable watching people who are friends with each other and who aren't really getting upset by it.
Yeah,
whereas it's not pleasurable to watch someone who they don't know.
Yeah, who they don't know, but also like there's very much a culture, and this happens in podcasts that I do with other people, where in the UK it's like people seem to have like a thinner skin, where like a lot of them, like they're like, oh, don't say that comedian's name on, like, oh, we won't name them, but X person or whatever. Whereas I feel more in America there's a culture of like playfully making fun of each other, maybe even when they're not there. Like, and like you say, it's like it's your friends, like it's people that you do respect. And that's an interesting point you said about the dat fan thing, where on a level I thought it was very funny, and there's a point in the episode where they tee up a topic for him to do essentially some prepared material, and Patrice says, do it without doing a Vietnamese accent.
Okay.
And he just doesn't have anything, and it's like calling out people on like their, like, we all know we have a shtick, like everyone has a thing. Like people make fun of me for going, oh, you just go some Catholic, some Protestants, and there's the joke. And I know that comes into my jokes sometimes, and like we all have our crutches that we lean on, and it's like, but that's what friends do, and that's what funny is calling people out on their little mannerisms and the way they do things.
That's why it didn't work with that fan, because he wasn't friends with him. I didn't know him, but I mean, I guess that's one of the reasons why I stopped being so interested in quite a lot of British comedy, because it became very nice, and like everyone liking each other. When I interviewed Stuart Lee, he made this point actually, like contemporary comedy is very much, you know, he was like liking each other, like, and he was like literally like, you know, but that's the whole of kind of, it's become a broader thing in culture now, where I used to be on Twitter, and I came off Twitter because it's like, if your friends are on Twitter and then you want to have an exchange on Twitter, other people seeing that will just think, what's going on here? Why are they being horrible to each other? He's a horrible person. And it's like, so it's no good doing that in public. And then with other people that you don't know that well, I don't want to just be going like, oh, great, good news, well done, and all that sort of stuff. It just seems it just doesn't suit me. It's not what I'm like.
And it definitely builds a two-facedness where it's like openly everyone's very nice.
Yeah.
But I mean, the green rooms are just like horrible. Of everyone going, oh, did you see them doing this? How'd they get on that? How'd they flip and da?
And it doesn't have to be in a nasty way. It's like in a funny way. It's like you have to you chew over the things that are annoying you, or, you know, stresses that have got going on, and you chew them over in a dark way, because that brings you back to like, haha, you know, it's laughing about it. When I came off social media, it was because on social media I'd be tweeted something to someone. I tweeted someone to someone, like a response, say someone said, oh, well done on the book stuff or something like that. And you tweet back to them like, oh, thanks very much, ! And then on WhatsApp, we'd have another exchange where going, oh yeah, it's not fucking sold any yet. It's what a nightmare. This is bullshit. You know? Yeah. And it's like, and that's where you're having the real exchange on WhatsApp, and you're having this like false performative exchange on Twitter. And it's just like, oh, this is horrible. I don't want to be part of this performative like niceness anymore. I'm nice to my friends. I don't need to show everyone that I'm nice to them. You know what I mean? It's like, So I can imagine that in the green rooms where you're just chatting about your industry. You want to talk normally and relax and be all right. Yeah.
And it's that fear of like, I don't know. I think that American method of like openly like kind of picking on each other and poking at each other, like even when it is in the public eye, and kind of poking back and forward, like I think that's a better culture than, and I'm sure they say things about each other behind their backs, that's just what happens, but like I think the British scene has ended up with this kind of, it feels quite cliquey and quite catty sometimes, and like it's all bubbling under the surface, but everyone face to face, like never, even with friends. Like if I see my friend who's a comedian doing a bit that I think has been done before, or is hack, or is derivative, I'll go, what are you doing with that? Like what's, because I think they're better than that. That's where that comes from. I think that they are funnier than the work that I respect the stuff that they can do. I know what their potential is, so I'll tell them if I think something isn't up to my expectation of them. And I think so few people do that, and it creates this real fear as a comedian that everyone's just saying the stuff that you're doing is good. Like any positive stuff, you were like, oh, great work. I just can't trust that anymore. And the thing of, I've made a point of, everyone when you come off stage goes, good set. I make a point of not just saying that because it's what you say. I've made a point of like, if someone bombs, I think it's funny. Like a good comedian bombing is really, a bad comedian bombing is boring because it's what's supposed to happen.
Yeah. Like and it'd be upsetting for them, and they don't know that they're any better. So, yeah.
But a really good comedian doing material that I know is their tried and tested gold to try and dig themselves out of a hole is the funniest thing in the world. And the people I get on with in comedy are the people who can come off stage after bombing and I go, and they're in on the joke. And when I'm bombing, the only thing that gets me through is comedians at the back of the room laughing at me. Because it's an acceptance of, we've all been there, and it's funny because you're good. That's why it's funny. But like, because if you were bad, it wouldn't be funny.
It wouldn't be funny. And
this is the, I mean, I don't know where it goes. I don't know where it comes from. You can see more supportive comedians coming through and realizing that the TV thing isn't what it's about, and it's not all about that. It's about us as a community building opportunities for each other, like they do with that tough crowd stuff, and and I can see that building more. And look, I'm only coming into this as quite a young guy, so it's like, I don't know. I think, while I think there's a lot of really good things about the UK comedy scene, I think there's stuff that is better about it than the American scene in some ways. I think that fakeness, I'm really excited to see leave, because it, like, I mean, just on a personal level, it causes me so much stress, because you can't even trust the positive stuff.
Yeah.
And you know, when someone talks behind someone's back to you, my first thought is, well, what are you saying about me?
Yeah.
When I'm not there, do you know what I mean? And I just want more of that open culture that seems to interest you from the book and stuff.
It's about honesty, isn't it? And you can be honest without, you know, it's just people who are outside that kind of atmosphere, who don't appreciate that kind of exchange, just don't get it at all. That just I'm the same with my friends. We just tease each other, and you know, and it's kind of like a put down for a particular kind of man now to talk about banter and stuff like that.
Yeah.
But it kind of, that's the way I grew up. That's where my, you know,
and it's important.
Dad was, and all those kind of people were, and it's kind of like, you know, people enjoy it. Like, you enjoy it, but you might not enjoy watching it. You enjoy it between you and your friends, you know, and it's kind of,
it's an incredible bonding experience because the only way you can say something jokingly horrible about someone is if that it's so understood between you that you respect each other and love each other.
Yeah. And yeah, exactly. But I wonder if it's because a particular kind of person has been able to thrive and survive in arts. When you were talking about money earlier and things like that, you know, maybe there's a particular kind of people. You also use that phrase community, like the comedy community, and I'm just really always cautious of things like, a community, because you always have groups of friends and stuff like that, but once you start thinking of it as like a community, then you end up supporting people who you don't really believe in. You don't think they're that good, and then it becomes kind of dishonest, I think. So yeah, I kind of like, I wonder whether the comedians that I will find funniest are the ones who are the most well loved in that community and supportive in that community, or they're the ones who are more individualist and you know, just trying to get on stage and get as funny as possible by themselves, you know. And I'm not saying they won't have friends and they won't be nice to their friends and stuff like that, but I'm not sure whether supporting the wider community of comedians is the people that are going to be the funniest.
No, that's a really good point. But it's such a minefield to walk as a comedian, to be like, well, I don't like that person, but they might help. And you just, but I don't want to, because if I wanted to do a job where I wasn't being the authentic me, I would get an office job, or I would do any number of these other things. Like, the whole reason I'm here doing what I do is because this affords me to feel more like myself. So I really kind of shy away from any kind of potential for me to lie to myself and not be who I am, because then what's the point of the whole exercise?
Yeah, it becomes very shallow. I've been into the, you know, supporting my writing community and stuff like that. I've done that bits of times, and it ends up feeling very shallow, and this isn't what it's about. I'm not supposed to be here doing any of this. I'm supposed to be just writing. One of the other reasons I came off social media, I'm supposed to be here writing. That's what I'm supposed to be doing. Go and find good stories, talk to those people who are involved in those stories, write those stories. It's not about, you know, just all the other stuff is, yeah, it might get you some, like, you know, some short-term kind of attention, but and I don't mean attention in a bad way. I mean, we need attention in our industry.
Yeah.
But I think in the long run, it's not going to be as good. I just wasn't writing as well when I was doing all that stuff.
Yeah. It's just what you said has really brought up, like, I'm in some like comedian WhatsApp groups, and people will send in clips or sketches that they've made and go, "Oh, guys, can you share this?"
Really?
Yeah. And
to share on your social media. I thought you meant like as in to critique it.
No.
Okay.
No. So they'll send in and be like, oh, like an Instagram link, and be like, oh, can you post this on your story? And it's such a hard thing when you don't find it funny, and you go, I don't want to share that because I think it's bad. Like, that'd
be a very funny thing to watch.
But people get so. I said to a friend recently, and he was putting out all these tweets and sketches, and I said to him, I was like, your social media output at the minute is very frantic. And this is one of my closest friends. And he said, that really hurt me. I took that really, really personally. And I was like, well, what did you want? What did you want me to say? You keep asking my opinion on these things. And if you don't want my opinion, then don't ask it's like that thing that you were saying where, like, they asked the question. Like, I don't know what you want me to. And maybe this is like, I know a lot of people think this is just me, like particularly my girlfriend thinks this is just me being a dick, but it's like, I'm like, if you ask me a question, I'll tell you the answer that I believe to be true. And there's a Patrice O'Neill quote where he says he doesn't understand the phrase brutally honest, because how can saying what you believe to be true be brutal? It should be like a brutal liar, like it. If you believe it to be true, say it, and then if it turns out not to be true, go, okay, I was wrong, and let's move forward.
Yeah.
From there.
I can see people send me like peers in writing send me stuff that they've written sometimes, and I'm not honest with them. Sometimes I don't tell them because I don't even think my opinion's that valid half the time. You know what I mean? Like, I've read people's stuff before it's been published, and I've not thought it's very good. And then they go on and get publishing deals, and the things do well. So it's like, who But I don't send my stuff out to people. Like, I never do that. I would never send. If I was a comedian, I would never send clips to people that I know or ask people's opinions on stuff. I'd get the opinion of the audience when they're laughing or not. You know what I mean? Like, because if you believe in it, you believe in it, and that's what you're doing. You know what I mean? Were you going to change what you're doing because of what someone else says? I think that would be very peculiar.
I've realized recently that there's two kinds of comedians, and probably across the arts generally. There's the comedian who tries to work out what the audience wants and attempts to make that, and then there's the comedian who makes what they want to make and hopes to find the audience that enjoys it.
Yeah. I do that with my books. I just write the books that I want to do, put them out. It's not a good commercial option, I'll be honest. But.
No, but do you find you feel better?
Oh yeah, I would never want to put anything out there that wasn't what I wanted to do. Yeah, people do that. People in book world, people write books, give it to their agent tells them all these things that they should change about it, and then they give it to the publisher tells them more things to change about it, and they change all. And it's like, but that's not your book anymore. You know what I mean?
No,
it's like, okay, you get some feedback or something maybe, or like, some line edits and stuff. But it's like to be changing your book to a great deal because of what these other people are telling you. I just don't see the point in it. Well, I guess the point is you want to like earn some money off it, but I always just wanted to have things that go on people's shelves that have my name on it, that truly reflect what I wanted to write, and I can imagine that with like stand-up. Like if I was going on stage, I want this to be really what I want to say. Otherwise, it's just going to be weak. It's going to be, it's just not going to be anything that's memorable. You don't stand up. You want people in 30 years' time to go, wow, you should see this clip of this guy back in 2021. You know what I mean? It was amazing stuff. And if it doesn't stand the test of time, then it's no good. And it won't stand the test of time unless it's real and authentic, genuine. Yeah.
Where you said you said like judge it on whether people are laughing or not, but that doesn't work either, because there's laughing and then there's that really cutting to the core of what's happening, and people remember, because you can see it happen. Comedians will get on stage and level the room and everyone will be laughing, and it will be, they've smashed it officially, like by the decibel meter they have there was lots of laughs and they smashed it. But then on the way out the door you go, oh, what did they talk about? And the audience go, don't know. No idea, because there are those crutches you can lean on. You see those comedians get up and go da 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 da, Croydon, blah blah blah, Lewisham, and it's like, okay, but you're not saying anything. Like you're making laugh. You're hitting all the rhythm of it. But, and that's a really hard balance. But I don't want to be one of those comedians who bombs and goes, oh, too honest. Well, did you not like?
Oh, that's yeah. I've been in those audiences before. I've had that in the Comedy Cellar, where American comedians have got up and they said something and you're not laughed, and it's like, yeah, they think you're too politically correct. And it drives you crackers in the audience, because it's like, honestly, this is not down to us. It was not a joke. I'll take the most shocking jokes you like, but it was not funny. And it might be a funny joke, but you delivered it badly. Like there was something off tonight. If that joke normally works, it's not the audience, you know.
Yeah. As a final little thing that I've seen, I really enjoyed in your book that I just loved hearing everyone's perspective on what was going on. I loved just going, oh, that's what Bonnie McFarlane thinks about that. That's a really interesting perspective on the DK thing. I was like, it's great to see a female comedian go, yeah, fuck that guy. Like now you know what it feels like to have a pre-existing idea of what you should be going on. You're not just guy number 7. Like you have this thing you have to navigate. That's what I do every night. Like get used to it. Like that's what happens.
Very perceptive.
I thought that was brilliant. And then to see other people's perceptions and again, like you said, the owner, really, really fascinating.
And then there's audience members in there as well, which I want to make sure there are. Yeah.
The Twitter storms and like I've had the worst is other comedians. Like I saw an interview with Stuart Lee and Jamali Maddox, which is really, really fascinating. I'd recommend it. Where what was it they were talking about? Oh god, it's completely slipped my mind. Oh no, I remember what it was. It's that thing about the community, and I thought they put it in a really interesting way, where it's like in those green rooms we will like shit all over other comedians and really like be like, oh, doing this absolute blah blah, and and it's, I think it's okay that there's comedians that I don't like and don't think are good. I think if it was any other way, it just wouldn't be the truth. But then as soon as like an audience member or like a member of the public or anyone on Twitter, like even if it's one of the comedians that I hate and they say all of the points that I disagree with, if they're not a comedian, I'm like, how dare you? Like, you don't know. Like, we all stick up for each other. Because it's like, no, we're allowed to, like, we've been through it. Like, you're not allowed to say those things. And I wondered, because I had a friend who read your book and said that they would have liked you to like almost disagree with people more and push back against what people were saying. And I thought that you represented enough sides of it that other people did that for you. And like you said, you didn't want to be in the book. Did you get any feedback from anyone to be like, why didn't you push back against this? Why didn't you push back against this?
The Times Literary Supplement, they ran a review and the reviewer in that said that, no, but I think she's right. I kind of try and make this point a little bit in the acknowledgements at the end, and I'll note in the acknowledgements, which is, so I never thought that these interviews were going to go in as transcripts.
Yes.
So when usually when I'm interviewing someone, I'm trying to get the facts correct. So I'm just asking them lots of facts, like and then what happened? What did this happen? What were you wearing at the time? Things like this. That's what these interviews were. I never meant them to go in as transcripts. So when they go in as transcripts, you suddenly see, like, if I'd known that I was going to publish these, or if it was going on television, on radio or something, then I would have pushed back, of course, and I would have unpicked controversial things that they said at that point in time. So no, they're right. I should have pushed back a bit more at times. Not because I necessarily disagreed with what the person was saying, but because you need to. If you don't push them back, it's unfair to them because they don't get to fully explain themselves. So now I wish I should have pushed back at times. Not that it's like I don't shy away from any controversial subject areas. No. If hopefully, it's got all the Louis C.K. stuff in and things like this. It's got lots of controversial words in there and things like this. So I don't shy away from any of that stuff. But yeah, during the conversations, I think, I sound like a crap interviewer, which is what I am.
There are little bits in the conversations where you just go, yeah. And I'm like, that's so funny. That's so funny.
There's one bit where Colin Quinn says something about the Comedy Cellar table. And I think my response to him is just, he tells me something. I thought something had happened with the comedy table, and then Colin Quinn tells me a different version, which is total surprise to me. And I think I just go, what, why, what? Something like that. And I liked all that sort of stuff being in, because I thought it's kind of, a lot of stuff I do is kind of a comment on journalism as well. And this is slightly a comment on journalism as well. Lots of me trying to fish for juicy details and stuff like this, and or push, being obsequious in order to get in order to continue the interviews and things like this. So yeah, that's all in there. I'm there to be criticised. I didn't put all that stuff in there thinking, I sound like a great interviewer. I thought I sound like a bad interviewer, and that's why it kind of makes me laugh a little bit. And also I thought it was important to show.
Just something that you've said that I'm into. What's your PhD on?
That's on creative writing, and it's basically there's nothing to do with this, but so it was about someone was making speeches in Sunderland which were kind of anti-immigrant and anti-Muslim speeches, and he ended up going to court, and so he had a trial, and that didn't reach a verdict. Then he had a retrial, and then he went to prison for 21. He got sent to prison for 21 months. So it was all about trying to write about that, and I'm doing a similar way to how we're doing with books. So it's just trying to experiment with non-fiction. So it's lots of his speeches, and then kind of my reporting on the ground and stuff like this, and a bit of poetry. But
well, thank you so much for coming on the podcast. I would recommend anyone listening to buy the book. I'm going to buy the Raoul Moat one as my next venture as a new book guy.
It's shorter, that one. So.
Well, straight after yours, I read a book by Sam Talent called Running the Light.
Oh yeah. I nearly called this Running the Light.
Oh well,
that was a working title for me.
His is exceptional. Just something about, and it's fiction, it's a novel, and it's written in that way where, like, being a stand-up comedian, through the process of new material nights and open mics and testing material in front of an audience, your writing style gets so dense. Every sentence and every word has to do something. Every word has to function within a joke. And I find when you see comedians writing fiction, that carries over, where every single word and every sentence functions to do something, and it's just like it's so just like kind of it's just so juicy and kind of like alive.
Oh, great.
And I'd really recommend that. It's about like a failing comedian on the road in America, and
I saw Doug Stanhope talking about it.
It's really exceptional, and that's what I followed on with, and I'm trying to keep my reading going. Something I found that's good is like not just reading before bed, taking time to read during the day, which is something I'd never really done, just to go, I'm going to read for half an hour, which like seems stupid, but like I don't want reading just to be a function that allows me to fall asleep better. Do you know what I mean? My dad listens to this podcast to go to sleep, and I find it so disrespectful. I can't do it. I can't listen to podcasts to fall asleep. I start to feel really bad for the podcasters. As soon as I start to doze off, I'm like, oh no, I should be listening. They're talking to me.
Oh no, it just engages me, so I can't.
Yeah.
I'm listening to it. Yeah. But it's nice that your dad listens to it. I've got kids. It's like you want to hear your kids, you know. So.
Yeah. Well, I kind of think my mom's like, you haven't called me in a while, and I'm like, just listen to the. But yeah, is there anything?
No, just the book. Don't Applaud. Either Laugh or Don't. The Comedy Cellar. It's on Waterstones, Foils, Hive, Amazon, and all that sort of stuff.
I'll shout out anyone in England. There's a great independent bookshop that I used to live near, the Big Green Bookshop, and they're good at sourcing.
Yeah, they're fantastic. Yeah,
books.
And I should just mention, actually, it's out in the UK, Ireland, Australia, New Zealand at the moment, because I forget that podcasts are international. It's not out in America until the end of May this year.
Okay, class, very, very good. And then don't attempt to find Andrew on social media, because it will, as I found, it will be fruitless. I was like, where is this bastard?
Sorry.
No, that's all right. And listeners of the podcast, don't forget to review on iTunes. Drop a little 5-star. Let us know what you thought. Subscribe if you're new. And share it with your friends. And again, if you want a bonus episode every Thursday, jump on patreon.com/Vittorio Angelone. Thank you so much for joining. I will hit end recording, and then we will have a secret chat that they won't get to hear. And then we'll actually leave.